Hey there, hi there, ho there, everybody out there in podcast land. Welcome to the latest episode of the Fortress of Rock. I'm the Maestro Kevin Crane, episode 89, April the 28th, 2023. As always, glad to have you aboard wherever you are, whoever you're with. Sit back, enjoy an hour plus as we discuss the week in rock and roll. And of course, travel back in time for some stuff that didn't happen this week, that happened years and decades in the past. But first up, as always, is News of the World, our tribute to Freddie Mercury and Queen. A little bit of a light week when it comes to rock and roll news, but that's okay. There's enough out there for us to discuss. And first up, let's start with some exciting news, potential exciting news for the Van Halen fans out there. I make no secret about it. I am a Van Halen fanatic. So anytime there is Van Halen news, it jumps to the forefront in segment one here on the Fortress. Both Sammy Hagar and Michael Anthony have basically confirmed here recently that there are indeed Hagar era extra tracks on the way. I just can't stand calling them Van Hagar. That's insulting to the memory of the great one, Eddie Van Halen. Sammy Hagar was the first to come out and mention this, and Michael Anthony pretty much confirmed it. Now, Michael Anthony got into a little more detail, not much, still both Sammy and Mikey very vague, just saying, yeah, we've got some stuff coming, some vault stuff. I think the reason why the Hagar era stuff is coming out sooner is, of course, because Sammy has some control over that. So I don't think these tracks are necessarily coming out of the 5150 vaults. But again, Michael Anthony kind of hinted that slowly but surely there is being progress made with Wolfgang Van Halen, with Alex, and Michael Anthony gives us all hope when he says that he thinks, yes, we will even see some David Lee Roth era bonus tracks at some point in the future. And I'm telling you, I know there is a lot of good, cool stuff from the David Lee Roth era, from the early years of Van Halen, that they've never seen the light of day. Now, the final studio album from Van Halen, A Different Kind of Truth, some of the ideas from the earlier songs were reconfigured, refabricated to become some of the songs on A Different Kind of Truth. But I've heard some of the originals. It's worth it for those to see the light of day so we can listen to them and listen to the differences. Of course, you can just imagine how David Lee Roth probably sounds so much different, given he's decades younger in the original versions. So let's hope. Box set would be awesome. The one thing I don't want them to do is tack a song or two on to re-released, remastered versions of the original albums. I find that to be a money grab and a very cheap way to hose your fans. And of course, Wolfgang Van Halen, Mammoth, WVH did that, and I was not pleased with him about that when he tacked 3 bonus songs onto his debut album. Expected us to all go out and spend more money. Now, of course, you can download the songs digitally. You can listen to them that way. You can be like me, old school, get off my lawn guy and burn a CD for yourself with the 3 songs on it. But let's just put out a box set. live versions, alternate takes, and these lost vault songs. That would be the way to go for Van Halen, in my humble opinion. Carl Palmer, we just talked about Carl Palmer last episode in our tour news, where he was going back out on the road for the return of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, where of course he plays the drums live for the audience, and then he plays along with video footage of Emerson and Greg Lake. Well, it still sounds like if things go well that tour is going to happen, but Carl Palmer did have to have some significant, serious heart surgery here recently. By all accounts, it went well, but it was not some minor heart issue that had to be corrected. This was major heart surgery, so you got to be very careful. Wouldn't shock me, wouldn't surprise me if this tour gets delayed or canceled. But the wonders of modern medicine, who knows? We recently had Jack Blades of Night Ranger have an issue, but I think his situation was a little bit less traumatic than what Carl Palmer has just gone through, so we will see. And of course, we wish nothing but the best for Carl Palmer, of course, drummer of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and of course, Asia. Well, the government's trying. God knows they don't do much. We have addressed this issue on and off over the past few months after the Bruce Springsteen dynamic pricing debacle, after complaints from bands like The Cure, Blink-182. The government is starting to get involved with Ticketmaster and Live Nation, spearheaded by 2 U.S. Senators, Ted Cruz, who, by the way, I think would make an excellent president, and Maria Cantwell. The Ticket Act, Ticket being an acronym, and I am not going to tell you what it's for because it's a waste of 30 seconds of my life and yours. This Ticket Act aims to supposedly end the quote-unquote junk fees attached to concert tickets, sporting tickets. Reading the story that was attached to this announcement, I don't see how this Ticket Act is ending the quote-unquote junk fees. It sounds to me like it's more about transparency. Basically, well, if you're going to screw the consumer, let them know up front instead of at the end. Get them in the front instead of the back. Oops, sorry. Still not explicit enough to change my podcast rating, but again, from what I read, it sounds like what they want more than anything else is when you go to buy a ticket, the senators want all fees up front before you go through all the steps and all the processing, putting in your credit card number, selecting your seats. Basically, when you go to select a seat, you are supposed to be told this will be your total price. You don't have to wait to the end to find out about facility fees, parking fees, processing fees. I mean, it's better than nothing. But again, the fees need to be reduced. Like we talked about here recently with Robert Smith of The Cure, getting $5 to $10 refunds for the people that bought tickets to The Cure's concert tour here in 2023. That's what we need. You shouldn't have to go to buy a lawn seat, a small venue seat for $40-$45, and then it ends up being over $60-$65 because of all these stupid fees. Yes, There is a service being provided, and Ticketmaster and Live Nation should make money, but my God, the profit margin is pathetic and ridiculous for the service they provide. And they don't even give you physical tickets anymore. You guys know that's a sore spot with me. I want that ticket as a souvenir. Doesn't mean I'm not going to buy the overpriced t-shirt. So we will see where Ted Cruz and Maria Cantwell go with this, if they get support, if they can push it through Congress. Oh, goody, Roger Waters won. Roger Waters will now be permitted to play in Frankfurt, Germany. Of course, another story from a month or two ago here on the Fortress of Rock, where we talked about Roger Waters and how Frankfurt did not like the history of quote-unquote anti-Semitism that Roger Waters has displayed in the past. And look it up, kids. He has displayed anti-Jewish adornments in his stage. You know that pig, that floating pig from the cover of Animals? Supposedly, at one point, he had the Star of David on that. Roger Waters, you guys know, I don't think he's a nice person. I think he's an evil, evil man. It's too bad that Frankfurt caved to the pressure. And I've done this in the past, talking about Roger Waters, the hypocrisy of his fellow musicians coming out to support him, calling it censorship. Yet they're more than happy, like guys like Tom Morello, as two-faced as they come. Cool guy, great guitar player, knows nothing about politics and social issues, even though he pretends to. He's a hypocrite just like some of these other guys. Defending Roger Waters while lambasting and denouncing others, you're picking and choosing who you think is a racist and who you think isn't a racist. Roger Waters, it's free speech. Somebody else, it's a hate crime. Make up your minds. Is it free speech for everybody? Or are we going to bring the PC hammer down when it comes to racial, religious sensitivity? All right, another tour news. The massive Metallica M72 World Tour has begun. I'm not going. I can't afford it. I've seen Metallica. Unfortunately, I think they're just too big now. I'm not going to sit in some massive stadium, massive arena, in the nosebleed seats, hoping and praying the sound is good, and have to pay ungodly amounts of money for the tickets on top of that. So if you're going, I hope you enjoy the M72 World Tour. Alter Bridge, staying out on the road. 20 North American dates in August as they come back from overseas. Support on various parts of this 20-date tour from, of course, Mammoth WVH and Seven Dust. If you have never seen Alter Bridge, shame on you. They are phenomenal. I recommend you check them out as soon as possible, and they are not all that expensive to go see. The biggest non-secret, part one, in tour news. U2 officially announced their Las Vegas residency and the dates, as they will be playing the MSG Sphere at the Venetian in Vegas. Is it really a residency when it's 5 dates, though? I guess it is, but it's a very, very short residency. U2 will be playing the MSG Sphere on September the 29th and the 30th, along with October the 5th, the 7th, and the 8th. So again, all you rich folks out there who can afford the hotel and the airfare if you don't live in Las Vegas or nearby, have fun. I can't even imagine how much the actual ticket prices are. Plus fees. Don't forget, kids, plus fees. And finally, worst kept tour news / secret part 2. We just talked about this a couple weeks ago when Joe Perry was discussing the re-release of one of his solo albums. Asked about touring with Aerosmith, said, yeah, we've got something working. Might be it. We don't know. Well, now we're getting cryptic graphics, cryptic images from Aerosmith and the Aerosmith camp, which looks to say, peace out. So how far off is the announcement of the quote-unquote peace out Aerosmith farewell tour? Once again, be prepared to take out a second mortgage if you want to see Aerosmith on their farewell tour. And of course, we all know with rock and roll acts, does a farewell tour really mean farewell? If the money's good enough, you wait a couple years and you come right back to gouge your fans again. All right, boys and girls, that is going to do it for segment 1. News of the World is over. But the Fortress of Rock is just getting started. Breakdown is up next. Brand new album from LA Guns, Black Diamonds. 2 new songs from Extreme, Banshee and #Rebel. And a brand new song from the resurrected Foo Fighters. Rescued, also on the slate. Hang out through a quick promo break. I will be right back to review all of that good stuff on Breakdown. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Fortress of Rock podcast with me, the Maestro, Kevin Crane. Of course, that was segment 1, the news of the world, our tribute to Freddie Mercury and Queen, where we look back at the past week in rock and roll and all the news and all the controversies that you deserve to know about. Next up is the heart of the show, the meat and potatoes, Breakdown, where we are going to review all the new songs, all the new albums, all the new concert tours, the shows that I've seen personally. Stay tuned for that. Of course, we're now available on Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Stitcher, Castbox, Google, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Hang out, kids. We'll be right back. All right, kids, segment 2 of the Fortress of Rock here, April the 28th, 2023, episode 89. Glad to have you back. You made it through segment 1. Now the fun begins. Not that segment 1 wasn't fun, but the hard rock and roll news gives way to new music. Here in segment 2, the Breakdown segment, our tribute to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Our featured album review of the week is the new one from LA Guns. Black Diamonds is the album. Is that a tribute, a nod in some way, shape, or form to Kiss? Who knows? 11 songs. Yes, we strayed from our normal rules last week with Metallica and the Hold Steady, but this week we are back to doing our reviews track by track. And the leadoff track is You Betray, which we have reviewed here previously on the Fortress. This is, of course, the first single, the first song on Black Diamonds. And I'm going to pair this up with track 2, Wrong About You. This is what we expect. These two songs, this is what we expect from LA Guns. That sleazy, grungy, punkish vibe. That dirty, nasty Sunset Strip sound. Classic LA Guns on the first two tracks, You Betray and Wrong About You. So right off the bat, we've got a nice, solid 1-2 punch for you. Then the brakes are slammed down, and this album comes to a screeching halt with the song Diamonds. This is a song that a 4-year-old probably could have written. I'm sorry, in terms of lyrics, there's not much there. And it's just the repetitive chorus over and over and over again. I know we're broke, but you shine like a diamond now, over and over and over again. It's too much. It's too repetitive. It's not creative in terms of the lyrics. It definitely drags the album down. Track 4 is Babylon. Not bad. Comes close to matching the first two tracks. Not quite there, though. Good, solid, not great. Track 5 is Shame. Unfortunately, a step backwards. Not really a song that I would put on an album. It's not that quality. It's not a high enough level. Then you get to track 6, Shattered Glass, another one of those songs that we reviewed, one of the initial singles off of Black Diamonds. Very good, very catchy song. Then after that, we're 6 songs in, 3 really good tracks. Babylon, again, solid. 2 that don't pass muster. And then unfortunately, after that, it just gets worse for the most part. Gonna Lose, it offers nothing new, nothing exciting. Got It Wrong, again. Musically, Tracy Gunn's great guitar riff in Got It Wrong, but the songwriting, lyrically, otherwise, outside of the guitar work, is not up to snuff. Track 9, Low Life, a little better. Kind of like Babylon, solid, tolerable. Track 10 is Crying, No Thank You. Maybe not quite as bad as the song Diamonds from earlier, but still just not enjoyable. Again, something that I personally would never have said, yep, that deserves to be on the album. And then finally, a decent closing song. Again, another great Tracy Gunn's guitar riff, lost in a mediocre song, Like a Drug. The closing track on Black Diamond's song 11. So where does the Maestro fall on this album? This album seems to encapsulate, to me, the career of LA Guns. LA Guns have always come off commercially as an afterthought when it comes to the 80s Hollywood Sunset Strip scene, overshadowed by Motley Crue and, of course, Guns N' Roses, Rat, and Black Diamonds kind of tells you why. You can hear it. This is a band that has talent, especially, again, I'll say it one more time, Tracy Gunn's great guitar player. but there's just something missing. There's something not there that explains why they never really achieved the massive commercial success of their peers. Black Diamonds is good. It's okay. It's relatively solid. Can I recommend it? I almost say go back to their last album they released a few years ago. Take the best songs off of that, take the best songs off of Black Diamonds, put those together, and you would have had a really, really good rockin' album from front to back, start to finish. And you guys know I hate bagging on a band who's actually getting out there, putting out new music on a fairly consistent basis. But maybe in this case, somewhere along the line, LA Guns should have stopped, slowed things down to put out one great album instead of two decent albums. All right, now we're moving on to the heavy hitters. Not that LA Guns isn't a heavy hitter, but for me personally, the two bands that are featured here on the Fortress this week in our reviews of singles. Yes, I still call them singles, kids. These are two of my favorite bands, so very geeked up about this. Let's start off with the Foo Fighters. Foo Fighters are back. I had a feeling. Dave Grohl is, I don't want to say manic, but he's one of those guys you can tell who can't sit still, even after losing his great friend, drummer Taylor Hawkins. You just knew that he would take, I don't want to make this sound awful or bad, but he would take the minimum amount of time to grieve, to ponder the future of Foo Fighters, and then he would come back with guns blazing. And that looks like what is going to happen here in 2023 with the Foo Fighters. Now, of course, last week we discussed the new album, but here we are coming out June the 2nd. The first single off of that is the song Rescued. Now, here's where I am going to rain on the Foo Fighters parade. And Foo Fighters Nation, do not get mad at me because I am one of you. I am a huge fan of the Foo Fighters. Rescued is, to me, a bit subpar for a big, massive comeback song to announce we're back, we've overcome tragedy, we've overcome our grief. Rescued sounds like bits and pieces of former Foo Fighters hit songs cobbled together. Does that make Rescued a bad song? No. Does it make it a great Foo Fighters song? Does it make it the appropriate song, again, for this massive comeback? No, it's not that good. It is good. It's not great. It's not groundbreaking. Honestly, it sounds like it's pieced together from classic bits of older hits by Dave Grohl and company. It's just a little bit disappointing. This clarion call bringing back Dave Grohl and the boys. I expected a little bit more. Foo Fighters Nation, I don't know. If you love it, good for you. It's a little bit tepid, a little bit disappointing for me. Still better than most of the stuff out there, obviously, of course. But I hope for a better song for the second single. And again, this is what worries me because most of the time the Foo Fighters, when they put out a new album, that first single is killer. So we shall see. Now, Extreme, you guys know, cannot wait for the new album, 6, to come out. The leadoff single from that, Rise, already my favorite song of the year now, as we're almost 4 months into 2023. Rise is still by far my favorite song of the year to date. So Extreme, as they announced their tour with Living Color, and you know last week I mentioned it, I am going to see this double bill, this fantastic. It's almost a dream double bill for me. As they announce this tour with Living Color, Extreme releases not one but 2 new songs, the second and the third singles from 6. The 2 songs are #Rebel and Banshee. Banshee is solid. Banshee is good. I'm trying to sound enthusiastic while not sounding enthusiastic, and let me explain that. Banshee sounds like a song that should be a solid middle track somewhere on 6. And of course, going back to my review of LA Guns, where there are songs on that album that I don't think should have ever seen the light of day. Banshee is not like Banshee is solid, definitely a worthy song to be on the new album. Maybe I'm looking at it through the prism of the tremendous song Rise. Banshee, again, just like we talked about here with the Foo Fighters, good, borderline great, but just not quite there. A very, very solid effort, though. Now, #Rebel, I needed to listen to this song a couple times. Didn't really grab me the first time I listened to it. I listened to #Rebel and Banshee back to back, and kind of after listening to both of them went, okay, I can see that, they sound good. Still, maybe I'm tainted because of my absolute love for the first single, Rise. Listen to both songs more and more and more. And as I just mentioned, Banshee got a little better, but never really rose to that ultimate level of classic song excellence. Now I can say with #Rebel, definitely a worthy second single from the album 6. #Rebel will get in your brain. It's got a killer earworm chorus. If they'd released #Rebel as the second single, Banshee is the third, I think that would have been a little bit smarter marketing-wise. Putting them out there together and having everybody compare the 2 songs at the same time, a little bit unfair for Banshee, because I definitely think #Rebel, worthy follow-up to Rise. I think that should have come out first. They should have waited a couple weeks before they let Banshee hit on the streaming services. But again, Banshee is a great song. It's just not a classic. #Rebel definitely could be a classic. And again, looking forward to this album, looking forward to the tour with Living Color like you would not believe. I have never, ever seen Extreme live in concert. One of 3 or 4 bands this year I'm getting to see that I can check off my bucket list. Megadeth is one of them. The Offspring, another. So it's going to be a great summer for concert reviews here on the Fortress. Unfortunately, I've mentioned this over and over again over the last few months. Just don't have anything lined up yet. Once we hit June, things will start heating up, and then we get into July, and it's going to be basically every week I will have a concert review for you here on the Fortress. So that is going to do it for Breakdown. Segment 2 here on April the 28th, 2023 is over. But you know what comes next. He's sitting out in the garage, firing up the rock and roll DeLorean, getting it rocking and rolling to 1.21 gigawatts. Yes, Doc Brown and I are going to travel back in time in segment 3. Anniversaries, birthdays, classic moments in rock and roll history. I Want to Go Back is coming at you after a quick promo break. I'll be right back. All right, now that we've looked at the current state of music in our breakdown segment, it is time to climb into the DeLorean and travel back in time to look back at moments in rock and roll history, birthdays, deaths, anniversaries of song and album releases. It is time for I Want to Go Back, our tribute to Eddie Money. Stay tuned. And as always, we're on Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Stitcher, Castbox, Google, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public, anywhere where you listen to your favorite podcasts. We're back here on the Fortress of Rock, episode 89, April the 28th, 2023. I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane, and segment 3, of course, I have my trusty co-pilot, Doc Brown, guiding the rock and roll DeLorean through the time stream. It is time for I Want to Go Back, as we look back at anniversaries of classic album releases, birthdays, and moments in rock and roll history. But you guys know, this is the time, each and every episode, where I have to take care of business, acknowledge some of the great podcast platforms and sources that we use for some of our stories and news items. First up, you've obviously found us somewhere. You're listening right now, which is awesome. But you have options. Always good in life to have options. The Fortress of Rock can be found on Spotify, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and Audible. Do not forget to check out the Facebook page. We always have fun stuff on the Facebook page every weekend. Of course, we always post a link to every podcast episode. But the Weekend Rock Project hits right around the same time as every brand new episode of the Fortress of Rock, Friday nights around 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. This week, we're going to do a little dancing. We are asking for your favorite songs. Try to do a rock song, but sometimes we loosen the rules up a little bit. So your favorite rock songs that are either specifically mentioning a type of dance or have the word dance in the title. Plenty out there to choose from. Should be fun. Should be a lot of great picks and choices out there for you to select from. Then, of course, New Music Sunday. Every Sunday afternoon, I will post a video of a brand new song out there. Probably one we've discussed here on the Fortress of Rock. Last Sunday, I put both hashtag Rebel and Banshee out there. We talked about those songs in segment 2 this week. So we will see. I have not finished my plan yet for what song will be featured on the Facebook page for New Music Sunday, but I guarantee it will be cool. How could it not be cool? It's on the Fortress of Rock's Facebook page. And we have sources for a lot of the stories, a lot of the things we talk about here on the Fortress of Rock. My brain is full of rock and roll knowledge, but it's not that comprehensive. I'm not trying to do a humble brag here. There are gaps. There are things I do not know. So I have to go with some sources out there on the internet. My 3 main sources for especially segment 1, News of the World, and this segment, I want to go back, are ultimateclassicrock.com, the Van Halen News Desk, and thisdayinmusic.com. Now, Doc Brown is giving me the stink eye saying, shut your yap, Maestro, about all this ancillary nonsense and get into the history of rock and roll for April the 28th. Well, let's start off with birthdays because we've really only got one. Kind of shocking. April the 28th, not a big day for legendary rock and rollers to be born. The one lone birthday that we have this week on the Fortress, April the 28th, 1952. Chuck Leavell. Chuck Leavell played with the Allman Brothers Band through the 70s. A lot of the peak albums, the most popular albums for the Allman Brothers. And then later on served as the keyboard player and I don't know what this means, but musical conductor, musical director for the Rolling Stones. Chuck Leavell known mostly for his keyboard work. Cannot argue with that resume. Rolling Stones, Allman Brothers. Thumbs up for Chuck Leavell. Happy birthday. Born on this day in 1952. Now we move on to anniversaries. Got a lot here, so we'll make up some ground considering the lack of birthdays I just mentioned. We're going to start from most current and go back in time. It's easier, Doc Brown tells me, on the DeLorean's transmission. April the 28th, 2015, Jack Ely dies. Who, you might ask, is Jack Ely? Jack Ely was the lead singer for the Kingsmen, of course, responsible for one of the greatest party songs of all time, Louie Louie. Who can ever forget that song in Animal House? Not trying to cast aspersions on Jack Ely, but he sounded drunk when he was singing the song. But we have to acknowledge one of the greatest party songs of all time, the voice on Louie Louie, Jack Ely, unfortunately passed away on this day in 2015. The streaming geeks out there, I am still old school. I still have CDs and vinyl and even a few cassettes laying around. But 20 years ago, 2003, April the 28th, the streaming business, the buying digital music business, took off when Apple opened the iTunes store. Again, 20 years ago on this day, iTunes became available, 99-cent songs, no membership fee needed. It changed the game forever. For better, for worse. Like I said, I'm still a big fan of physical music. April the 28th, 1979. Arguably the biggest hit for Blondie. Some would say Rapture. Some would say this song, Heart of Glass, was the number one single in the U.S. on this day in 1979. Little bit disco there. You know, Heart of Glass had that disco dance beat to it. Now, Rapture, of course, was a rap song. So Blondie, of course, always creative, always trying out different things. And of course, their biggest successes were when they ventured out away from the new wave rock and roll that they were initially most well known for. Of course, One Way or Another is a song that comes to mind, the prototypical Blondie song. But Heart of Glass was number one on this day in the United States in 1979. Very underrated soundtrack to this movie. Now, the movie was released today, April the 28th, 1978. That movie would be FM. Soundtrack was phenomenal. I'm not going to say anything about the movie. We don't critique movies for the most part here. But I can tell you, I bought the soundtrack on vinyl way, way back in 1978 and was not disappointed. And of course, the big hit off of the FM soundtrack was Steely Dan's title song, FM. But the movie, released today in 1978, FM. This one's tough for me, kids. April the 28th, 1973. If you've been listening to The Fortress here for a while, you know how I feel about Pink Floyd. I've talked about Roger Waters in this episode in segment 1. I am not a fan. I think they're vastly overrated, pretentious. Yes, they have a few good songs, but the fanfare, the critical accolades that this band has gotten over the decades just boggles my mind. A lot of people would say one of the greatest albums of all time was number one in the U.S. on this day in 1973. That would be The Dark Side of the Moon. Of course, we've talked about the fact that Roger Waters is getting ready to re-release Dark Side of the Moon solo. He's got his own solo interpretation of the classic Pink Floyd album because he is arrogant. He obviously thinks he is the be-all, end-all, and the contributions of the other members, whether it be Nick Mason or David Gilmour, whoever it might be, they don't matter as much as he does. Dark Side of the Moon, number 1 on the U.S. album charts today, April the 28th, 1973. April the 28th, 1969. The debut album, self-titled debut album from the Chicago Transit Authority was released. You might know them better by the name that they decided to call themselves from the second album on, shortening up the Chicago Transit Authority to just Chicago. And then finally, April the 28th, 1968, Hair opens in New York City. All you hippies and neo-hippies out there, rejoice. You can't downplay, just like Dark Side of the Moon, you can't downplay the influence of Hair. It was a landmark show, arguably one of the greatest shows of all time, greatest stage show, musical of all time. Not really my cup of tea. Again, I am not a hippie, so didn't do much for me, but like Jesus Christ Superstar. Or basically pick your musical. I'm not a stage guy. I'm not a musical guy when it comes to people breaking out into song in the middle of a storyline, whether it's on a Broadway stage or whether it's in a Hollywood movie. It's just not something that I get into. If I want to listen to music, I'm going to pop in a CD, turn on Spotify. Some of you are going to drop the needle on an LP, some vinyl. That's the way I want to listen to my music. If I want a linear storyline, I will watch a regular movie or read a book. Again, I don't need people breaking into song in the middle of a plot line. But that's going to do it for segment 3. I Want to Go Back is done. One more promo, and then we will talk about what I'm going to be reviewing in the coming weeks. Wrap It Up is next. I'll be right back. Well, we hope you enjoyed our trip back in time, looking back at the anniversaries, the classic moments in rock and roll history. But of course, the DeLorean works both ways. So now we have to move forward. The last segment here, as always, on the Fortress of Rock with me, the Maestro Kevin Crane. Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Stitcher, Castbox, Google, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. It's all about the future. What's coming out here in the next month or two? What songs? What albums? What concert tours? That's why we call it Wrap It Up. Thanks to the fabulous Thunderbirds. Thanks to you for hanging out. Here comes our final segment. All right, kids, that's going to about do it for episode 89 of the Fortress of Rock here, April the 28th, 2023. As always, I thank you very, very much for hanging out with me for an hour plus every Friday night to talk about the music that we love. Wrap It Up, our tribute to the fabulous Thunderbirds, of course, the fourth and final segment each and every week. Not sure yet what I am going to do for an album review. After the May 5th episode, I should be set for a while. But the problem is, both Winger and the Smashing Pumpkins come out on May the 5th. I will not have time to give them a thorough vetting by the time I'm due to give you another episode. So, I'm working on it. Probably have to dig up something a little bit obscure, a new band, maybe something that slipped through the cracks in the last year or so, still relatively new. But once we get to May the 12th, Winger for sure, the album 7, and then after that, it will be the Smashing Pumpkins' massive opus Autumn. I say it every week. Right now, still don't have any concerts on the agenda. It will change. It will change, I promise you. Once we hit June, they'll start trickling in. And then we hit July, and it is every week until September. I'm telling you. I am not joking. All right, in terms of songs, yes, I know I am the biggest Peter Gabriel procrastinator ever. Every time I mention you guys, I'm going to review one of his new songs off his upcoming I.O. album. It takes me 2 months to get around to doing it. And I'm still not quite ready to review the title track yet. But since I don't have any album on the slate for next week right now, definitely can say that all the songs that I'm going to tell you about here will be in breakdown on May the 5th. In addition to I.O., the title track again for Peter Gabriel's upcoming album. Second release from the upcoming Dave Matthews Band album. That song is Monsters. That will be on the slate for next week. John Mellencamp's first single off his upcoming album, Orpheus Descending. We mentioned it last week, coming out June the 25th. Hey God. That will definitely be on the slate for review next week as well. Then finally, one of the reasons I do this podcast every Friday night is so I can find out what kind of songs hit Spotify. Fridays are now when you get most of your new releases. Not only the albums, but songs that hit streaming. Usually, not always, but usually hit Fridays, so that way I can update you on what has just been released. When of course, this is going to make me sound old, and I am old, so there you go. When I was younger, it was Tuesdays. It was the same as DVDs or movie releases. Back then, probably VHS. But movie releases, of course, still come out on Tuesdays when it comes to the physical formats, the DVDs, the Blu-rays. But of course, the recording industry decided to shift the new release day every week for music to Fridays. Probably, my guess would be to separate it from the movies. Don't clog up the entertainment pipeline. So that's why I wait until Friday nights to do this show, is so I can tell you the latest when it comes to new music. So one new song pops up today. The fourth single from the upcoming Rival Sons album, Dark Fighter. The song is Guillotine. Still don't know why they delayed the release of this album as long as they did. I believe initially it was supposed to be out in February or early March. Now we're looking at, I believe, a June release. That's why we're seeing so many singles. That's why they're stretching out the release of these singles for Rival Sons. So Guillotine, the fourth song from Rival Sons off their upcoming new album. That will be on the slate as well in breakdown next week. And that's going to do it. Wrap It Up is wrapped up. The Fortress pulling up the drawbridge, turning out the lights, done here for episode 89 on April the 28th, 2023. I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane, as always, very, very happy, excited, pleased to talk about music with you each and every Friday night. Even though it's cheesy, even though it's by an artist I don't like, I always like it. It's cool to close out each and every episode with love the one you're with. Just can't sum up a better way to live life. There you go. Peace out. Have a great weekend. Survive the work week next week and meet me right back here wherever you listen to podcasts. We're probably there, and we will discuss more rock and roll. Take care, everybody.